We need to stretch a winch line. Now we just installed a winch on this vehicle and it's got synthetic line, but we'd have to do this if we had a steel braided line as well. You'd still need to pre-stretch the winch line. And this is something that you're going to want to do on a brand new winch, but also after you've used your winch, you want to come back in a safe environment and reset your winch line and get it ready for the next time you need to use it. But stretching the winch line is something that you have to do when you first get your winch, and it's a lot of times overlooked. And the reason that we want to stretch the winch line is the line that's on the drum of the winch, when the factory installed it, they didn't put it on under load. They just roll it on as quickly as they can. It has like maybe 10 pounds of tension on it, if that. And if you will, the line is basically fluffy. It's the easiest way to explain this. The line itself is a larger diameter basically when it's not under load. It's fluffy. But when it goes under load, the line is going to reduce in diameter as it's being pulled hard, and it becomes a hard line at that point. And we want the line that's on the drum to be all hard line. We don't want to have a fluffy line below, and then we start pulling a hard pull, and that hard line finds its way between the fluffy line. In other words, the puffed up line is not very firm, and the hard line, when it's getting pulled, it has like, you know, you're doing a 6,000-7,000 pound pull. It's going to find its way, the hard line is going to find its way between the soft line and start getting stuck down in your soft line. And that poses on a synthetic winch line a major problem down the road. When you go to pull line manually, you're going to pull it and you're going to find you can't yank the line out any further. That can be avoided by making sure the line is pre-stretched in advance. Now, if it's steel line, it's worse. The steel line, when it goes to a hard format, it's going to actually crush and start damaging the softer or fluffy steel line that's below it, that's not under tension. So we want to have tension on it at all times. So what we're doing today is that we're going to be doing that tension with these two trucks. So we can do the tensioning with any vehicle. We can do it all by itself with one vehicle, and we use a tree. As long as we're in a safe environment that our winch line can be stretched out in front, we're not going to have somebody go by on a motorcycle and get clotheslined or anything like that. We can use a tree, a strong post, a stump, whatever you've got. I like to do it in a flat area. Gravel is great to do it in, because if it's you by yourself, you can pull the winch line out and then set your e-brake on your truck to have a bit of a drag to create some resistance, and then walk with your truck as it pulls itself towards the object that you used as a fixed point. If you have access to multiple vehicles, you can use another vehicle as a dead pull. And in this case, that's what we're going to do. We're going to be using this 2022 Bronco to pull towards our FJ Cruiser, creating some resistance. And I've got a helper that's going to be in the vehicle that's going to be using the brakes of the truck. And this is a 6,000 pound vehicle, so we're going to be giving a nice, good drag for the FJ to bring in. Now, when we're tensioning the winch line, we want nice tension on it, but we don't have to have a complete massive hard pull. This is a 9,500 pound winch. We don't need to try to recreate 10,000 pounds of pulling. We just need to have a nice, good hard pull for it, so the winch line itself is pre-stretching and setting itself correctly under the drum. When we're doing this, I'm going to be using gloves for safety for my hands as I operate, and then I'm going to be using a soft shackle on the truck itself. And then, even though this is a wireless winch, I'm going to be using a manual winch controller, and I'm going to be the one in charge of the winch. Winches, of course, are very dangerous. You want to make sure your hands are never getting down here and sucked into the fair lead. And one of the best ways to keep that from happening is if you have control of the controller yourself versus somebody else doing it. So I'll be on the controller, I'll have my gloves on, soft shackle we're going to be using on the Ford, and we're going to run this line out. And when we run the line out on a winch, we always want to run the line out with the winch in neutral. Winches have the ability to power line out, and you only want to do that if you absolutely have to. The reason for that is that when you use power out, the winch engages a drag brake in the winch, and some have the brake under the drum. And when you use the drag brake under the drum, it creates heat that transfers into your winch line. And there has been a lot of cases of synthetic line where people have kind of melted that last wrap of synthetic line on the drum. So we don't want to do that. We're going to reach inside. We're going to use the clutch, which is easily accessible. with the Metaltech Stronghold bumper that's on this vehicle. The two stars of our video here, we got the 2013 FJ Cruiser in cement gray, and we got ourselves a 2022 Ford Bronco in cyber orange. And let's go ahead and start getting this done. We're going to use an Outpost off-road synthetic shackle here. These work great, super fast. The Bronco has a factory soft shackle opening in it, which is wonderful to use. So now I've got a nice point for this large hook to be able to hook onto. But in order to get this out, I'm going to go ahead and put this in neutral and hook up the wired controller for the remote. So I got the hood open. I'm going to go to hook up to the winch controller. This works with any vehicle. This particular one, we got the Stronghold bumper, which is hidden inside the winch or the bumper. And we have the solenoid behind the grill. So I'm going to just reach back there and plug this right into the solenoid. It's easy to do. So next I'm going to come in and reach down and release the T-handle on top of the winch, which releases the clutch. And so now this winch line, if I reach down here, I can start pulling the winch line out manually. So at this point now, I am completely manual with the winch line. And these synthetic lines, you'll see have this abrasion sleeve on it. And this is meant to be primarily near the front of your winch line. So you want to always keep this here. But keep in mind that you may need to slide this abrasion sleeve back on your winch line if you're pulling and it's like maybe going across some rocks, like it's going over down an edge or something like that. Remember that the sleeve is actually meant to be used to slide back as a guide point for your line, because abrasion and sharp points are the worst thing you can do to the synthetic line. If you don't have enough of this and it's going to wrap on a bunch of things, use something else for the line to go across if it has to go over some rocks or something like that. A floor mat, your buddy's jacket, something. I mean, just put something down to make it so you're not abrading the line. So I'm going to go ahead and hook this onto our synthetic. And whenever you use a hook on a winch, you always want to remember the term hook up. This is just proper winching safety, but we're going to hook from below up. And the reason for that is that if this hook failed and it opened up, it's going to fly the direction of the back of the hook. We want it to fly straight into the ground. We don't want it to fly up and over and hit somebody. I'm going to be watching the line through the window that we have above our light bar, and a proper bumper we want to try to have where we can see the winch line inside so we know where the winch line is on the bumper. I'm going to be taking it all the way down to about half a wrap or half a full wrap on the bottom on the drum itself. So the drum is going to have a little less than a full than half the drum filled with a line on it, the last wrap basically, halfway through the last wrap. And that's where I'm going to be telling the Bronco to stop, and then I'll engage the clutch back to engage so the electric winch can start doing its thing. And then we're going to go ahead and start pulling the truck in under power, putting the line on in a hard format. Okay, so we got our line. We're down to the indicator line, which is telling us we're at the end of the wrap. You see how much we have left on the drum right now. Not the entire drum, but not a little more than halfway we have it off. So about 70% of the drum is exposed right now. I'm going to go ahead and reach in, engage the clutch so we can go ahead and start using the winch motor to pull in the dead pull to start putting the line on tight. As I bring this in, I'm going to be using my leg as a guide as I guide it back and forth. I'm going to have my hand on the winch line itself up front, and I'm going to be using my other hand behind me on the winch controller. Now again, very important, I'm the one on the controller, therefore I know if the winch is on or off, and I'm away from the winch. We never want our hands down here. Very dangerous. So we're going to have our hands out here, and I'm going to keep an eye and I can see where the winch line is. So I'm going to go ahead and bring this up a little bit. I'm going to have my dead pull in the back up a little bit and make it a little tighter. Right before we start pulling the winch in, we're going to have the engine running. We want to have the engine running, so therefore we have a good healthy power being fed to the battery while we're putting a load on everything. And that's mainly it. We always want the engine running. So when we're using the electric winch, if we can. Yeah, the winch line's wrapping back on itself nicely. We're almost done. I'm gonna bring it in the last few wraps. And then the last like 10 feet or so, I'm gonna go ahead and unhook and bring it on in a kind of a fluffy state at that point for the last 15 feet, because we're never gonna be using our winch line less than 15 feet. So we're always gonna pull in at least 15 feet that we're gonna be using. So I'll bring that last part in, we'll stop, and just for safety, I'll be able to hang onto the winch, hook and walk it in for safety, so there's no chance of me getting sucked into the winch.